Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Sarah Schneiderman. Sarah is a highly accomplished artist based in Connecticut whose artwork reflects her interest and deep concern about the environment and sociopolitical issues. Incorporating these passions with her artistry, Sarah utilizes plastic and other non-recyclable trash as the medium for her artwork. During the program, we're learning why and how Sarah's pursuit of trash art came about. We'll view and discuss some of her engaging pieces, and in the process come to better understand and appreciate how she goes about creating her unique and very appealing creations and some of the civic issues that are interest to her. Let's start by meeting Sarah and then finding out all about her craftsmanship. Welcome, Sarah. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thank you.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to view some of your work at the Newton Free Library. Eager to hear much more about it and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you'd share what you'd like a little bit more, maybe about your background, artistic interest, civic interest, and concerns. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, I was born and raised just outside of Washington, D.C., to a mother who had lived in an anarchist colony for 6 years as a child, and a father who really aligned with the proletariat. He was a dedicated public servant. He worked for the government for many years, and they introduced me to the world of activism by taking me to civil rights marches, Poor People's Campaign, and then that became marches against the war in Vietnam. So I was indoctrinated pretty early into having a political consciousness that then filters into the other areas of my life. As far as being an artist is concerned, I don't remember not making art. I think I started making art as soon as I could hold a pencil or crayon. I have a bachelor's degree from the Corcoran School of Art in Washington, D.C., which is now part of George Washington University. It wasn't at the time, so I can't say I'm a GW alum. And then I have a master's degree from the California Institute of the Arts in Valencia, California. My work with using found objects actually started in undergraduate school, though I wasn't as dedicated to the found object genre as I am now. I used found objects and new materials in my artwork at the time. In graduate school, I did other mediums. They called it post-studio, performance art and video, things like that. And then I went to work in the corporate and some nonprofit and universities. I was never an art teacher. In 1995, I had moved to Portland, Oregon, and I bought a house that had the T-bars from an old clothesline. Didn't have the clothesline anymore, just the T-bars. And I found this big wire, a metal loop, like a band on a barrel, and this old big piece of plastic. And I ended up putting it on the T-bar and making an angelic form. And that was my start on using primarily recycled materials. From there, I created a lot of what I call trash totems, similar to that old clothesline. And then in 2008, I moved to Connecticut and continued working. I worked for a nonprofit at the time, and I didn't really do much with the art. I was not inspired. Nothing happened. in the end of 2012, I retired and took up scuba diving.
Ah,
And after 6 months of scuba diving and 3 trips to the Caribbean, aren't I lucky? Um, I recognized I was learning more about the impact of garbage on marine life, and particularly people were noticing the gyres, the trash gyres at the time, and particularly the Great Pacific one. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity to make fish out of trash. And
ah.
that's when the most recent iteration of my work started. So I've been doing it for a little over 12 years. The subject matter has changed through the time, and we'll get into that.
That's fascinating, fascinating. So what's the appeal of these type of non-recyclable materials for you for making art?
The appeal is that, as we know, landfills just get filled with stuff and it gets compacted down and nothing happens to it. And it's actually then leaches toxins into the ground soil and the water. More and more studies are coming out that shows that plastic in particular is impacting our hormones and causing heart disease problems and a lot of other health issues and environmental issues. I'm not a scientist and I don't have all the details on that, but I was recently listening to a podcast about phthalates, which is the material in plastic that makes it either really pliable or hard, and it
Mhm.
also can be found in other substances. And the impact that if a mother ingests phthalates at a certain time in the gestational period, it has a deleterious effect on men's anatomy. Leave
Mm,
it at
mm,
that.
mm.
So, and that not women, not the girl child, but the boy child. And that's just one aspect, but
Huh.
it is a hormone disruptor for females as well.
Mhm. Now, how do you go about creating your artwork? We're going to enjoy some pieces very shortly, but how do you go about choosing the content, either the individual, maybe the issue, animal, and then how do you envision it? And we'll hear about the process as we see some images too, but just some introductory words, please.
When I started with the fish, I decided to make fish that I had seen while I was diving. I, because I'm a visual artist, I'm pretty good at fish identification. And and then I found out that no, you can't tell this fish from that fish unless you look for a little dot on the gill cover or something like that. But there were some that were really clear. And so I started making realistic fish using the trash, keeping the trash out of the landfill and out of the oceans. Part of what happens is even properly disposed of trash can like blow out of the dumpster, the garbage truck, and then it all gets washed downstream and goes into the
Mhm.
ocean.
Mhm.
And then in 2016, after that election, I was devastated, and I couldn't make pretty fish even anymore, even though the fish are not just pretty fish, they have a message. So I started making portraits of the president-elect and the people he was appointing to his to work with him. The and a few months into 2017, it was clear that he had huge turnover, and there was an article in the Washington Post that was showing all the people that had left. So then I used that as the basis for which portraits I chose to make. Um, in 2020, we had someone else elected president, and I had another article saw another article in the Washington Post, which was about the record number of people who were the first in their cohort to be elected or appointed to
Mhm.
certain positions. And I switched what I was doing to them, and the meaning of the garbage changed because it had just been garbage before. And now it was the elevation of people who we as an American society had relegated to the trash heap.
Oh, yeah, wonderful analogy there. And I think want to take advantage of enjoying your work and going to bring up the first image here of somebody, as we'll see as we go through a few of the people, as is the case with your exhibition, I wasn't as familiar with as I might be. If you could share first who we're viewing and enjoying, and then we'll talk about how you went about and what you utilized to make this wonderful portrait.
Yes, thank you. This is Anna Irma Lawson Rivera. It might be Rivera Lawson.
Rivera Lawson, right?
Right. I'm pulling up my cheat sheet on my work. She is wait. Okay, she is the first Black and out lesbian in the Puerto Rico Senate.
Mm.
I made this piece on, here we are, on a campaign lawn sign. And part after one campaign, I don't remember which it was, I got a bunch of lawn signs from someone who is the Democratic caucus leader in that area, because it's a conundrum that Democrats who claim to be environmentally aware and friendly make lawn signs out of plastic.
Mm.
So I got a bunch of lawn signs, and this one I sewed, which was interesting because I had to push through the hard plastic.
Ah,
Um, um, and then I had a frame made for the back, and it's gallery wrapped. So none of these portraits are framed. They all have the colors go around the edges. In part, that's when I started making the portraits of the 45th president, I didn't want to make them precious, and framing makes artwork precious.
mm.
So in this one, I used a lot of food wrappers and greeting cards, which if greeting cards have glitter on them, they're not recyclable. If the paper is coated, it's not recyclable. You know, it's lovely, it's shiny, but it's not recyclable. So I use greeting cards. I got, people give me collections of stuff. So I got a collection of beads from a family friend who had passed away quite a while ago, but nice thick beads. Someone had purchased beads from a senior center in Israel where they made them out of paper, and then she sent them to me. People give me button collections. I use those. My mother had a bunch of broken jewelry she'd gotten from a large department store that she then remade, and they sold in the lobby of the DC welfare office to raise extra money for foster parents.
Ah.
So, right. So that's a lot of the materials that are
I
in
mean,
this piece.
it's fascinating to look at. I mean, and even seeing the image doesn't do it justice of seeing it in person by no means. Um, but just how you might have some type of idea at the beginning, I suppose, but then piece it together with materials that you're inspired with, that you have or that you purchase, you find, and then put it together to look like these incredible finished products.
Yes, and usually my supplies are are sorted by color. So usually it's simply the color that I'm using, though
Ah,
sometimes I'll go for the texture as well, particularly like in the hair or
mm,
in the necklace here. Um, though there is one piece that I chose, a very specific piece, which is a portrait of John Bolton, and his mouth is open and it's black. And I found this little piece of black that had the word love in it. Now, Bolton is known as a war hawk, and I
Yeah.
put the word love in his mouth because despite his political ideology, he loves somebody and somebody loves him.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Incredible, very creative, very creative. Let's move on because we really want to share with people a few more of your pieces. Again, an individual here I wasn't familiar with, Chuck Sams the third.
Yes, he's the first indigenous person to be director of the National Park Service. And of course, the national parks, a lot of them are land that we stole from the indigenous people.
Mhm.
And um, he was, I think, the last portrait I made, and I had kind of given myself a cutoff date of I'll do portraits until the people were appointed to this date or that date. That's why there's no um, Ketanji Jackson Brown, because she was appointed to the Supreme Court after my cutoff date. So,
Uh-huh.
but when I saw that he had been appointed to director of the National Park Service, I really wanted to make this piece, in part because not only are the parks specifically and directly related to the environment, but also because of what we, and I'm using the global we, my family was not in the United States at the time, did to the indigenous people, their lands, their cultures, their beliefs. They were all trashed.
Mm.
And and here I'm bringing the trash back to honor the parks and the people and this man who is in this significant position and the first one who is indigenous holding this position.
Oh, it's so helpful to hear your thoughtful reasoning and commentary. It just adds that other layer to just the artwork that I've been enjoying. And, connected to this, the similar topic, the Department of Interior Secretary, Deb Haaland here.
Yes, and Deb Haaland is the first indigenous person to lead the Department of the Interior. And actually, I believe National Parks is under Interior.
Mhm.
Um, and and again, the whole idea of that someone whose ancestors had their land stolen from them is now overseeing the federal government's responsibility to the land.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's incredible point that you're making here. Again, for the sake of time, we want to move on. Somebody very much in the news still for now, Kamala Harris. Some of the inspiration that you had creating her wonderful piece here.
I so much wanted to be able to retitle this piece
Mm,
First Woman President of the United States. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
yeah.
This piece is made on a kitchen cabinet door.
Huh.
And part of it is that out of the kitchen and into the White House, and out of the
Mm,
kitchen and into the Senate. There are other people who are also on kitchen doors. And it's the same thing that we don't have to be women in particular tied to the kitchen and reaching out to be of influence in a really great and positive way.
What are some of the things you hope your artwork evokes in viewers when they tour, say, an exhibition?
Well, in these pieces, I want to remind people of the progress that we've made and that sometimes the progress is not as great as we expected. For instance, one of the pieces that I didn't have in the show is a Cynthia Loomis. She was the first woman elected to the Senate from Wyoming. And that is in 2020 is like
Mm,
surprising.
wow.
Yes, so
Wonderful.
that's part of what I want to bring out. Another piece is that the people who are our legislators are people who make policy around environmental practices.
Mm.
And they are people that we can try to influence or encourage to stand up to what industry is doing to the landscape.
Wonderful, wonderful. Most definitely. Let's enjoy again somebody I wasn't familiar with. This is striking. The colors, the materials you used here. Chevron Jones.
Chevron Jones is the first out gay person in the Florida Senate. He
Mm.
actually was in the Senate before he came out. After his brother died, he decided that he needed to be out, be a totally authentic person. And the wonderful thing was that he came out and was reelected.
Mm.
This piece is also on a kitchen cabinet door. Again, this one specifically, and I suppose with the Kamala Harris one too, is evoking the idea of coming up from working for the master to being the person
Ah.
who makes important decisions and influences what happens in our country.
So again, for instance, with this piece, what type of sketching might you do beforehand before you go think about the materials, or what is involved in that interplay?
I don't keep a sketchbook like a lot of other artists.
Mm.
And what I do is I'll find the person that I want to make the portrait of, choose a photograph. Usually I try to find one that has a common creative license. Although the way I manipulate photographs is covered under fair use. We could get into that, but we're not going to. And then I'll actually manipulate the photograph through technology
Ah,
to give it a presented an image that I want to then create, so that it's not just a flat, straight portrait. And this one, I don't remember what technique I used, but it created such a dramatic image that this is how I chose to go ahead with it. Then what I do is sketch onto the surface that I'm using the basic outline. I use an old school technique called gridding, and
mm,
I and the software that I have that shows the image, because I work from photographs, I can put up a 1 by 1 inch grid on the image, and then I can draw that out onto the substrate that I'm using. I'll put in the main portions, or main parts, which is like the outline of the head and the shoulders, the chin, the mouth, the eyes, and the ears. And then I just start finding the colors that I want to use and attach them. I believe this one I use glue. I'm getting
mm.
away from that. But my early works, um, I use hot glue to attach the trash and then coat the whole piece with thinned PVA. That's Elmer's glue, 3/4 Elmer's to 1/4 water.
Mm.
But I'm trying to get away from using plastic to talk about plastic.
Yeah,
So,
right. Understand. Understand. You
right.
know,
And it's frustrating because the hot glue is so fast and sewing is so slow.
it's fascinating to hear the impact of technology, in your case, in your art making, and that's a whole other program. But it's also reassuring to know there's still room for Elmer's glue in the process. We want to move on here. A quick word about final two pieces before we come to the close, Sarah. This one, Medina Wilson Anton.
Yes, she's the first practicing Muslim elected to the Delaware state legislature. And I have actually quite a number of Muslims in the
Mhm.
collection that I did. Part of why I wanted to represent Muslims in this collection is because of the Muslim ban from the previous president. Muslims are becoming a more and more significant part of American society. And it is important to show them and say, look, they're here. They're people who have a great faith and are willing to show up for the country and give themselves to the country. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that all Muslims are terrorists and that all terrorists are Muslims, which is
Yeah.
not true, neither way. And I want to break that belief. I happened to spend 10 days in southern Thailand, which Thailand is mostly a Buddhist country, but in the south there are a lot of Muslims. And we would take tuk-tuks as our taxis, and wonderful Muslim women were driving these taxis. And
Hmm.
I felt really like connected with them and cared about them. They're just people living their lives like everybody else. And that's part of what I want to show here.
Wonderful. It definitely comes across. Well, in the just couple minutes we have left, we definitely want to hear this last piece. Somebody locally we're very familiar with, Kim Janey, and the fabulous creation that we see here, the materials that you've chosen.
Well, this was a delightful piece to work on. And Kim Janey was the first woman mayor. She was acting mayor of Boston. Again, I did this on a kitchen cabinet door.
Hmm.
And um, and she just has hair that's a force of nature, which I love because I think I can't remember the name of the technique, but she doesn't straighten her hair. And I really like that because I think that, I mean, sure, go ahead and have fun with your hair if you have it. And so
Yeah,
like,
if you have it.
right, for a long time, I dyed my hair rainbow colored.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and what a celebration. I believe she's the first Black mayor of Boston also, and in a town that's been so known for um, racism and segregation, that this is a real celebration of Boston and of Kim Janey.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Sarah, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you so much, not only for sharing your artwork, your process, your craftsmanship, but the thoughtfulness that you put into your work is something I got a little bit by viewing your exhibition, by hearing you eloquently speak about it, just adds that extra dimension and come to appreciate your work even more. I know in the credits we'll have some contact information for viewers and others who want to find out more about your work. Keep in touch, perhaps. But for today, I just want to say thank you again and continued success with future endeavors.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm so pleased to have had this opportunity to talk with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.